Okay, so we started the effect in a previous video. In this video I'm going to show you how to finish off the effect. So we ran into a problem. If I hit play, we basically get these particles that change color based on the density of the system. The problem we ran into is how in the world do we get the polygonized mesh that represents the fluid to take in the color data from the particles and render out that way, because right now if we render out, we end up with nothing more than a gray mesh that obviously doesn't look very good. Okay, so first thing I'll do is let me take the cache point cloud. I'm going to hit F3 and go to its visibility settings, and I'm going to tell it not to render, just because I want the fluid mesh to render and not the particles. Okay, so how do we get this done? Alright, so let's state what the problem is, and then we'll state a solution. The problem is the particles right now have color data, but the fluid mesh does not. So we need to somehow transfer the color data from the particles to the fluid mesh. Okay, so that's pretty simple, but how do we actually do it? Well, this is actually a pretty tough one and takes a little more advanced knowledge of ice to get done. I give credit for this following solution to Stephen Blair from the Softimage development team, which recently answered a question very similar to this one on the XSI base forums, in a thread where someone was asking specifically that question: how in the world do you get the color data from the particles in a Lagoa sim to transfer over to a polygonized mesh with the Polygonizer? And Stephen Blair went ahead and answered and came up with a pretty good solution. I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but Stephen Blair's solution actually works out pretty good. So now I'm going to show you what that solution is, and I'll take you step by step so that you can go ahead and take advantage of it, because it's actually a very useful technique. Alright, so the first thing I'll do is I'll take the polygonized mesh, and I'm going to go over here into the ice view down here. I'm going to go to the create menu, and I'm going to click on ice tree. So I'm going to create a brand new ice tree for this, and you'll see it over here on the right. Here's the Lagoa Fluid Shaper ice tree, and here's the new ice tree that we created. Okay, if you want to, you can rename this ice tree, which is probably a good idea. To always rename things to stay organized. So let me call it color gradient ice tree. Okay, so this is the color gradient ice tree, which makes more sense. It's empty right now, so we're going to go ahead and start to create some nodes. So basically what we need is a bunch of get data nodes, and then we're going to set some data for the color. So the way this is going to work is, first of all, what we need to do is get color data from the point cloud that has all the colors. So here's the point cloud in the Explorer, so I'm going to click and drag it and drop it in here inside of the ice tree. So step one done. What we're also going to need is we're going to need a self node position data from the actual polygonal mesh over here. Okay, so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a get data node. I can do that pretty easily. Let me just go to the Polygonizer, drag and drop it right in here into ice. Now let me open up the Polygonizer node here in the ice tree by double clicking on it, and you're going to see that the get data is Polygonizer. If we go to explore, we can actually go in here and explore a few things. So if I wanted to, I could come in here, go to the polygonal mesh, expand it by clicking the little plus icon there, and we've got a whole bunch of data that we can get over here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get the node position, which you can find down here. So here's node positions, all in alphabetical order, so it's easy to find. Just go to N and you'll find node position. Once you get node position in place, we're going to need get closest location node. Okay, so to get one of those, we'll just come over here to the ice preset manager and just start to type in get, put a space, and then put closest, and you can see it starts to narrow down our selection. So we're going to get the get closest location, which you can see down here. So we're going to drag and drop that over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the point cloud, I'm going to take its value, plug it into the geometry. Then I'm going to take the value, which is the yellow port over here on the node position, and I'm going to drop that into the position over here. So that part's done. Now what we need to do is we need to get another get data node. So let me go over here and type in get space data, So here's another get data node. Right now it's red because it doesn't have any data. If you open it up, you'll see it's empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into the get data node, into its PPG, and I'm going to type in the word color. I need to take this location port over here on the get closest location, and I'm going to pipe it into the source port here, and now it's going to go from red to blue. So what we're going to do now is take the value here, which is actually a color value, and we need to plug this into a set data compound. Okay, so we can get a set data compound over here. So let me type in set data. So you can see here's set data. So I'll drag and drop that in here. You're going to notice it's red because we don't have any data set. If I open it up, it's pretty much empty. So I'm going to take this red port, plug it into the set data node. I'm going to plug it into the value. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this execute, plug this into the first port over here. Now you're going to notice it's still red. So let's open it up. Let's see if we can do this through the Explorer here. What I want to do is I want to set some data for a color at vertex property, which is what I have to do next. So what I'm going to do is, let me close this. With the polygonized mesh selected, I'm going to go over to the property menu over here, and I'm going to get a color at vertices map. Okay, so I'll click on that, and now this object has a color at vertices map. If I go ahead and open it up, if I open up clusters, you can see here's a vertex color property over here. So what I'll do is I'll open this up. Let me go to Explorer. Let me go to the Polygonizer over here, and let me actually set Polygonizer, and then I'm going to go back to the Explorer, and let me go over here to, let me see if I can find it. Let me go to clusters. So basically what I did was I went to the Explorer, I dug into the clusters folder, under UV clusters auto, under vertex color, I found this colors info right here, which I went ahead and I clicked on, and that's pretty much it. So now with that done, we should be good to go. Now we're not totally done yet. There's still a little bit more to do here. What we need to do now is I'm going to hit Control 7 to open up the Material Manager. I'm going to create a new material. So let me go to Create. And I want to create an architectural material, so let me do this. Let me take the wine bubbles material, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to take the duplicate over here, and I'm going to rename this and call this gradient mat, or short for gradient material, so I know what it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to nodes here, and let me actually do this with the preset manager. It's going to be a little bit easier. I'm going to do a search for color map lookup. Here it is. You want to grab yourself a color map lookup, drop it into the render tree. I'm going to take this color map lookup, I'm going to plug it over here into the, let me see where I want to plug it. Here we go, fall off down here. You want to go to the refraction, fall off, color. If I open up this shader node over here, I'm going to take the diffuse, knock it down to 0. Go to transparency, reflectivity, all this stuff looks good. Optimization, I'm going to turn the refraction fall off on. For the distance, you can really set this to whatever you want. I'm going to set this to something like 6. Use end color to true. Okay, I think it's pretty much good to go for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the Polygonizer mesh. I'm going to right click on the gradient material and click on Assign to Selection. And then I think I'll close this. I think I'm finished with that. I'll keep the shader PPG open so that I can make adjustments if I need to. Alright, let me take the actual particles themselves. I'm going to hide them. Let me play this again. Here comes the mesh. You notice that the mesh now has color to it. It's no longer a gray mesh in a viewport. And if I render it out, it should have color inside of the mental ray render as well. And it's having a little trouble rendering right there. Let me pull the camera back a little bit. And I'm not really seeing the color on the mesh. See a little bit of color right there, but it's actually not working out too well. Well, you can't really see the color here, I'm noticing. You can see it in the viewport, but when you render out, you can barely see it. And I think the reason for that is I just didn't set up the gradient to be very apparent. So let me go back to the cache point cloud. Let me open up the density gradient here. Let me take this factor and adjust it. So I'll drop it down so this thing's very blue. I'll render this out, and now you could really see the color start to come out. So if you notice you don't get the colors that you want, you can always go back to the density color gradient and just change the colors. And now you can see as I render this out, it's picking up the colors from the vertices, and the vertices are picking up the colors from the actual particles. So let me set the max density to 1. Now when I render this out, I get this bluish color here. So essentially, you can use this technique to transfer color over from the particle system to your mesh. And by using this gradient, this Lagoa density color gradient, essentially what you can do is you can make the colors change in the fluid simulation based on the density of the particles. So areas where the particles are really heavy, you can get one color, and areas where they're very light toward the edges of the fluid, you can get a lighter color, or maybe even make it transparent. So it's a pretty cool effect. In order to get a more detailed fluid simulation, you can see down here we've got this blue. Over here where it's less dense, we don't get so much blue. And you're free always to change the colors of the gradient however you like. So that's pretty much it. Pretty simple post sim effect to do. There are quite a few post sim effects, as you can see down here. So I invite you and encourage you to go ahead and try them out. For example, you might want to try out the velocity color gradient instead of the density color gradient, which is the one that we just used. We already saw how to use the advect points, but there are quite a few, and they do different things. So you might want to experiment with them, check them out, see which ones you can work with and to get your projects done. Right, so that's going to do it for this video. In the next one, we're going to start talking about multi-phase systems with Lagoa.